All right, good morning, everybody. So today in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to do the rib cage and a little bit of the neck. I'll do the skull and the hands for the La Catrina on a later video. So this one's just going to be the rib cage on this side. So depending on your figure, you might just need the front, but I'll also show the back too if you decide to have a dress that's open. Some of them, like this one, I don't need to see the back, but it's up to you. So be creative on how you want to do that. So I'm going to start with the front side first. So now on this one, I've already added a couple things on just because I started this video the other day, but I want to show you how to do that top little V part. Because when you're making your rib cage, it doesn't have to be perfectly anatomically correct, but you want to have some stuff that kind of looks like it is. So I just mixed an off-white clay. I just took a little tiny bit of brown and I added it to my white and just mixed it up like we normally do. Now, if you roll these on a piece of paper instead of on the tin foil, a lot of times it's a little bit easier to make the coils even and a little bit skinnier and stuff. So, you know, give it a try. But for videoing, it's harder to show it on tin foil. So for that V shape, all I did was I made a piece that was a little bit longer than what my ribs are going to be. And then I kind of held it on my fingers like this and just pinched it just a little bit. So I made just a little V like that. So I pinched it, and then when I set it on there and I squished it a little bit, that'll make kind of the collarbone area. So that's how I made this piece right here, and I just added it on. So the next thing that we're gonna do is the actual ribs. So you can see I've got like the sternum bone here, and then I have some rib bones. Now, most of the time you're not actually gonna see the entire rib cage, so I'm just showing the part that I'm gonna see. And I'm just building on top of my shape. It's a La Catrina doll, so it doesn't have to be like perfect in the shape that it is. It just has to be, you know, kind of look like a rib cage. So to do that, this first one can either go up a little bit or mostly out to the side straight. This middle one is usually fairly straight, and this bottom one kind of comes down a little bit. And you can see like I'll leave a little gap in the middle to make that fit. So I've already pre-rolled a bunch of little pieces just to kind of help this go a little quicker. So don't worry about how long or short they are. As long as they're long enough to cover where you need it to, that'll be fine. Now, usually when I do this, I am looking straight at it, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna kind of check every so often. So I'm leaving a little gap in between, but I'm just taking these pieces and adding them on. I'm gonna check it. Okay, I want that one a little straighter. And then once I'm happy with the placement, I'm just kind of pushing down on it just a little bit. And my main goal here is to make sure that it's as even as I can get it. So I'm gonna check it. Whoops. That's okay. It's just clay. And if you get done and you decide you don't like it, it's just clay. Just take it off and try it again. No big deal. So now that, like I said, this bottom one kind of comes down a little bit. So I'm going to have it go down. And all the extra on the side, I'm just going to trim off a little bit later. So if there's a little bit hanging off the side, you got a little bit too much, that's okay. Because it's a little bit easier to trim it off than it is to add more on. So now that I have the ribs that I think are going to be showing, I'm going to add on that sternum bone. So I'm just going to take one that seems like it fits pretty good in there. So it goes right there. And I'm just going to push that in there. Now, it's kind of up to you. It depends on what you want it to look like. If you look at this and you're like, oh, it doesn't quite touch the other bones, and you don't like the way that looks, take it off and make a bigger one. It's just clay. It's not a big deal. And if you're like, no, I like the way it looks, then go for that. That's fine. So now that I have the basics on there, now what I'm going to do is just trim off some of the extra. So I know that my dress is going to cover most of this. So I'm just going to take my needle tool and scoop off some of the extra like that. Because really, I don't want to add a bunch of bones right underneath the dress just because I don't want to make it too bulky because it kind of wastes clay a little bit. So I'm almost done trimming. Here we go. Okay, so now the front is basically done. The next part that I would add on is actually the neck piece. So I'll show you that on this one right here. Pardon me. Okay, so I gotta give myself a little space. I'm gonna roll some of these ribs out of the way. So I can take this because you wanna kind of roll it down just a little bit. It's gonna be bigger than the ribs, but you don't want it to be super huge, but you want it to be freshly rolled because if you try to make something that's curved like that neck bone, if you try to make something curved like that and your clay is really cold, it'll just crack when you try to bend it as opposed to bending. So you want to make sure that you've bent it or rolled it out fresh so it's ready to go. So now for that one, I'm just gonna, I roll it out and then I'm gonna flatten it just a little bit with my finger. When I'm done flattening it, this is actually gonna be the back side of the bone, and I'm going to use this same clay for the spine on the back as well, because your neck really is part of your spine. And one thing I'll point out again when I go show you how to add this on is your neck is not in this very center of your head when you're looking at it from a side view. Okay, so I trimmed off a little piece. I'm going to kind of poke the little edges in. I'm gonna kind of start to curve it a little bit. And then once I have that, then I'm gonna lay this on top right here and I'm gonna pull it around the wires. And like this one, I didn't make it long enough. That's okay, because you know what? I can save that for my spine and reuse it if I need to. So I'm gonna cut one that's a little bit longer. And that's one of the things that I really like about using clay, especially the polymer clay, is, you know, until you bake it, you can change it and fix it and make it however you like it. So really, you know, this is a creative process. So, you know, make it as cool as you can. Okay, so I made that a little bit longer. So now I'm just gonna wrap it around the neck, like I said, and then just barely kind of pinch it in the back. So that one fit way better. So now you can kind of see I have just a little bit of a spot where I'll blend it together just a little bit right there. And I'll poke at it a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Most of the time you're not even gonna see that part. So depending on what your dress looks like, you're not gonna see it. Now, when I do this, I'll add on 2 of the neck bones to start with, and then I'll add on the rest of the neck bones when I add the skull on later. It just makes it a little bit easier to deal with later when you're adding the head on. So now I'm just gonna stack it right on top. It doesn't have to, like, you know, you don't have to blend this. In fact, you don't wanna blend it, otherwise it won't look like bones. So, but I did the same thing. I just kind of wrapped it around, poked it a little bit, so that way it's connected. Now, like I said before, what I wanted to show you was your neck, when you have your head, is not gonna be, here, I'll show you on this one. Your neck is not gonna be in the very center of your head. So like right here, the neck lines up from the side view way towards the back. Now from the front, it lines up in the center, and from the back, you can't see it, but it does line up in the center. But from the side view, it's way in the back, okay? So like when I show you this one again, see how the neck is towards the back of the rib cage. Okay, so now I want to show you how to do this, the back side. So the ribs and the spine on the back. So to do that, you basically start it the same way, where you have all the little pieces, and you're gonna add on little ribs, one side and then the other. Now on the back, like this is a La Catrina doll. So is this perfectly anatomically correct. It's not. So sometimes I've seen La Catrina dolls where they have ribs that go from the very top and they come all the way down to like where your hips would be, and that's not realistic. Like, that's not how a real skeleton looks. But this is just an interpretation of a skeleton. It's just an artistic interpretation, and you can make it look however you want. So that's kind of comforting sometimes when you're like, oh, okay, you know, I can make it look, I can feel free to be creative. So I'm just gonna keep adding these on just like I did on the front. The ones in the back tend to be more flat and go down sooner than the ones on the front. And if you find you're starting to get like clay on your hands that's a different color from holding down onto the bottom and stuff, just keep a little paper towel next to you that you can wipe your hands off from time to time so you don't transfer your colors onto your nice white bones, your bone white bones. Okay, so make sure these are stuck on there. And then instead of adding the sternum bone like we did on the front side, now we're just gonna add on more of the vertebrae. So that's this part right here. So we're gonna add this little center bit. Now, like I said, I can reuse this one right here. I have plenty of this though, so I'm just gonna start with this. But these ones are significantly shorter because you really only have to show this side. And like I said, this has to be kind of freshly rolled out for it to work right. Because if you try to pre-roll this and you bend it, instead of bending, it'll just crack. And then you'd have to start over again, and that wouldn't be fun. So I just bent it into a U shape, and I'm just sticking it on there. Now it's gonna overlap you wanna make sure it kind of touches the other bones, and it's gonna overlap the little ribs just a little bit. I wanna make sure those are stuck on there real good. Okay, and you're just gonna keep on going down. And like I said before, I'm having the side that was up against the table face the outside because it's a little bit smoother and cleaner. And it kind of gives, like, I still have a rounded edge on here. And when I bend it, it kind of gives it this nice kind of bone shape for the spine. So you're just gonna add that right on top. Kind of make sure that it, you know, poke at it. And if you decide you don't like one of them, just take it off. It's just clay. You can change it or poke at it as much as you want. And really, if you like it the way it is and it's not realistic, that's okay, because we're making a La Catrina doll, and that is not necessarily anatomically correct. And sometimes they can be even more interesting when they're not fully anatomically correct. So you're just going to continue that process, making sure those vertebrae touch the vertebrae before them, until you get as far as you want to go. And like I said, if you are just planning on having the bones in the front show, then that's totally fine. It just depends. So if your dress covers up the back of your project, that's okay too. But the process is going to be the same all the way down. And like this one I've already finished, so I did this all the way down because I'm planning on having a really low back dress on this one. And then you can see, just like on the front, I used the same process to trim off the extra because the dress is going to cover this side, so I don't need to see that either. All right, so that's how you make the spine and rib cage on the back and the rib cage on the front and the two little neck bones right there. Thanks for watching.